seems like the theme here is collaboration, people coming together from different sectors. Kyan, I'm noticing your $1 million Resilience and Recovery Fund. Would you want to dive into the details there, how you've seen success?
Yeah, so we partnered with our local CDFI, the Tulsa Economic Development Corporation, which we already had a partnership with. We annually give them CDBG funding to make loans to disadvantaged businesses. So we were luckily able to build upon an existing agreement that we had in place with them. We used a set of funds that we had earmarked for commercial revitalization. And we sent an initial $1 million to TEDC. I think by the end of today, we'll have essentially gone through that initial round of funding. We're going to add another $1 million in CDBG funds that the city will receive through the CARES Act to make additional loans, and then are looking at whether we could use coronavirus relief funds and the CARES Act to add some additional funding that could be targeted toward sole proprietors, which is a segment of the business community that we haven't been able to serve with these initial rounds of funding. Happy to answer any questions on what we did. We partnered that with a platform called Tulsa Responds, which was funded by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, which essentially provided navigators that helped. So rather than applying for loans directly to TEDC, we directed people to this Tulsa Responds website, and they submitted submitted their information, and then a navigator helped them apply for not just our loan fund, but also helped them determine if they were eligible for PPP or the EIDL loans. And now they're moving on to things like helping people apply or file their taxes so that they can get the personal relief funds that were included in the CARES Act. So that was kind of an innovative way to help make sure that we provide broader support to small businesses and entrepreneurs.
I don't know if I was just able to chime in there, so sorry, I was raising my hand.
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, can you repeat, who was the organization that was kind of doing that third-party vetting? Because we've been trying to figure out a figular mechanism as everybody knows, it's been overwhelming, I think, to the business community to determine PPP, right? EIDL, local city products. Can you speak to that a little more?
TulsaResponds.org. It's led by a group, which is actually a private equity group called Atento Capital. Their LP is the George Kaiser Family Foundation. But I could provide Marcella's contact information. She could give the details on how they identified navigators and helped train those individuals so that the navigators could help kind of educate businesses on the federal programs and other sources of relief beyond just the city's loan fund.
Lindsay, I see you mentioned you all are designing programs at the EDA to support innovation and entrepreneurship. What's the process for which communities are selected, or how are you sort of applying those resources from a federal level?
Yeah, so all of that for our dollars is actually currently up in the air while we go through program design. We do know that we did receive an apportionment through the CARES Act, which was actually $1.5 billion for EDA wide. Obviously, the part that comes through to our office will be much smaller than that, but will hopefully be a good amount that will allow us to fund some work happening by groups focused on innovation and entrepreneurship, directly related to COVID or in support of work that was maybe displaced or having to be redone or rethought of as a result of COVID. So we're currently in program development now. We're hoping to announce something in the coming, month or so for folks to engage with that. But it will be a grant program, and something to note is it will more than likely have a lower match requirement threshold than our typical programs that are run through our office.
Lindsay, could you share who your office is? Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Cox. I'm the program manager for Build to Scale, which is out of the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship with EDA. So the Build to Scale program, which is actually active right now, strives to build regional economies through scalable startups. So the work that we specifically, our office, will be looking to do as a part of this relief effort will have a similar notion to that work, but the program design will be a little different.
Thank you, Lindsay. Adam, you had
and
a really...
if anybody has any, I was just going to say, if anybody has any thoughts, questions, feelings, things they're excited about, places you think funding could go, we cannot fund startups directly, but we fund those support organizations that help them along. So feel free to shoot me any messages with ideas or anything of that nature.
Something that came up in our group, thank you, Lindsay, again. Something that came up in our group was really Adam Klein. Would you mind introducing yourself and the project launch that you are doing, or the landing spot?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Adam Klein. I'm part of the American Underground team in Durham, North Carolina. We're a startup hub with about 250 early stage startup companies. And I was mentioning in our breakout that we started a program about 2 weeks ago, announced that we were going to accept applications for what we are calling the landing spot. It's a program that's a 3-month virtual incubator program for people who've been laid off during COVID who are thinking about starting a company. And so we've opened applications. We've got about a dozen folks in already. We expect to be somewhere around 25 or 30. We think we can successfully support about 5 at a time, and we'll run it like a cohort model. We've been able to transition most of our programming online pretty well. And so we're hopeful that we can, give these entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs, a kind of startup 101 program to work them through free of charge. And then hopefully thereafter, if we get rolling back into space, can give them kind of an easy landing in our private offices or co-working space.
Is that funded just through your organization, or how much of that is a collaborative kind of mechanism?
It is. It's just our organization. Our city and county leadership has been focused mostly on public health impacts right now, and their budget. I'm sure for everybody on this call are probably all in the same spot. I'm seeing the city's projecting maybe a 20% decrease in the funds that it's going to have available in the budget that it was operating off of. So right now what we're seeing is that our path to getting stuff out of the gate is mostly private sector led, at least at this point. And we'll see kind of as time rolls on what our other possibilities might be.
Yeah. I'm going to thank you, Adam. That's very helpful. I'll tee up Elizabeth Cromwell, who's a Charlottesville local, and with our Chamber of Commerce. I'm kind of, as I was just reading through the group chat, it occurred to me that one way to kind of divvy this up a little bit and provide some structure is there's a local collaborative effort that is happening in each of our cities. It's probably greater and lesser extents, but it's kind of trying to get the major stakeholders together to figure a way out. And then there's also, as Adam and Rick have shared, there's novel initiatives that are tactical in nature that an organization might be spearheading. And those things are not necessarily going to help. Well, they're not going to be like the whole community's response, but they're just interesting, cool things that I would love to see shared. And then the third prong to this is federal response and just overall assets, because as Adam was just indicating, the budgets for all of our organizations and all of these efforts are uncertain at best, and we're trying to figure out that landscape. And I don't want to get caught up too much in that conversation because we don't fully know what that will result in. But it is something to acknowledge of just like, okay, we all have this work we're trying to do, and how do we do it? And I wonder if we start with the idea of collaboration in our local ecosystems. And Elizabeth, maybe you can talk about Project Rebound, and then anyone that has ideas based off what Elizabeth is talking about how your community is kind of navigating this collaboration mentality, I'd love to hear it. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sure. Well, thank you, Paul. It's nice to meet all of you. I've actually met a couple of you in the past. And Marcus Shaw, I brought a whole group of people to learn from him in Chattanooga when I was in Frederick County, Maryland. So still inspired by the work you're doing. So Project Rebound is something that we just launched last week. And it kind of came as a response to regular meetings that I was having with the city and county and University of Virginia offices of economic development. And what we were finding when we were meeting with businesses is that, everyone was dealing with their own 5-alarm fire. And we were trying to help with some of those urgent needs and also try to kind of get our head above the waves and think about, what's a little further down the road. And much to my, I'm honored that the folks in the city and county offices of economic development, as well as UVA, thought that the chamber was uniquely qualified to be a convener and a gatherer of small business and large business and anchor institutions and government. And so we launched this thing, and we also tried to have a very positive name for it, which, funny enough, seems to have had a really great response. So Project Rebound, we used a quote from Coach Tony Bennett, and we talked a lot about, our basketball team. but his quote after they won the national championship was that, the adversity itself was ended up taking them to a place that they couldn't have gotten to otherwise. And so we're trying to look at this adversity that's affecting all of us so negatively and trying to think, well, where can this lead us to? How can we take this adversity and leverage it into a better economy in the future? So it's been a very interesting project. We've been sort of making it up on the fly, but we've created 7 different committees. We selected co-leads for each one of the committees, but then left it open for anybody to self-select and join a committee if they wanted to, whether or not they were a chamber member. And in the first couple of days, we have over 130 people now registered for these groups, and they include people, everyone from college presidents and the president of the hospital to very small businesses that are struggling, in the day to day. And so we've carved them up into groups and asked them to talk about kind of what's working kind of well for you, if anything. What can we learn from that? What are your biggest pitfalls, and what can we learn from this to help us move forward? So what I've learned so far is that people have different levels of comfort with not knowing what the outcome of these conversations will be. And so we're trying to be very careful about, I think I don't want to put my chamber board in the position of, owning a document that says, let's cut all taxes permanently, or things like that. We're trying to kind of stay away from the kinds of advocacy that's going to require a lot more input. What we want to do is have a short-term phase 1 report that's more action oriented, and use this report to fill out the chamber's work for the rest of the year, probably, and probably beyond that. So in a nutshell, it's been great. Everybody supplied something different. The county is supplying scribes for all of these meetings. UVA is supplying professional moderators for all of these committees. We're all supplying something unique and different. So it's a true team effort.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll connect everyone after this if that sounds interesting. I'm sure there's going to be lots of interesting ideas. we will share everyone's contact. You can feel free to dig in more with each one, because there's so many fascinating things going on. Anyone else have a thought about collaboration in your community and how it's going and what would make it better, and or projects that are going on? Go for it.
So, Paul, I'm happy to share what I see going on across the country. I have the benefit. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Cecilia Wessinger. I'm one of the eShip community activators, working with the Kauffman Foundation, and we have the benefit of seeing things from across the borders view. And so, some of the things that we're seeing is a lot of the communities that are doing really well in response, like Elizabeth was saying, brought together the existing systems that were in place. So in Tulsa, as Kyan mentioned, it was like catalyzing all of the people that you knew in the network, and the communities that have the most connected ecosystem builders usually respond much better because they're already connected and they're already talking. So there's trust and collaboration already built in. The other thing that they're doing is they're catalyzing them to do the thing that they do well, across the board, right? So it's not like coming together and thinking outside of your normal scope to address the issues. It's bringing your skill set and knowledge and sharing it in a wider group. So, so having all those components, like she spoke about Tulsa Responds, or like the Tulsa Kitchens connection is part of Hunger Free Oklahoma, brought together restaurant workers and food trucks and people that are already in that industry, and then use the distribution model around the school systems to be able to feed the people that need to be fed. So it wasn't like reinventing the wheel or training on a new skill, because we don't have time to do that. It's taking all of the people that are already in your community and catalyzing them to focus on a different thing. And then the other part is to build for resilience. So on calls with other ecosystem builders throughout the last month, it's knowing that this is not going to be the last pandemic, unfortunately. This won't be the last disaster that we'll have to address. We're really going to have to get resilient about how we respond and coming together. So Chattanooga does a really great job because Marcus and Enoch know each other and they know other people in the communities to be able to catalyze. And it doesn't matter what size your community is, it really does depend on the people. So resilience, definitely inspiring and getting the experts to do the things that they're experts at. And then the other thing that we're talking about a lot is this has shown that the system isn't broken. The system really works for the people that the system was built to work for. What you're seeing are the cracks in the system. So women are being displaced a lot higher numbers, and minorities disproportionately are being displaced a lot higher numbers than others. And so it's addressing what the short term is, the reaction, what we need right now. So feeding people, making sure that they can pay their rent. There's a midterm thing, which is the transition of how we're going to pivot everybody. And then there's the long term. So there's a bunch of people that are getting together, talking about how we do this in the long term. And that goes from Cook County just brought a bunch of people together to talk about what the day after looks like. There are rural ministers meeting in North Carolina because churches are a great place that are trusted conveners. They bring people together. They know what it is to pass the plate and share and support each other. There's a rural movement, so rural entrepreneurship with RCAP and a bunch of other organizations looking at what is the digital divide mean to the people in schools? What does it mean to try to engage people in community when they don't get your email notices or they don't see the videos of the experts sharing their knowledge? So it's all of those things, but I think it's really, now that we're past the initial like response urgency, it's really giving us a chance to look at what's not working and go forward. So
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you. Anyone else have a thought on community collaboration? It hasn't spoken. Please proceed. Go for it.
Hi, this is Janae Roscoe from Operation Hope.
Hi.
Hi. And I wanted to build up on what she said about resiliency. Operation Hope partners with Homeland Security and FEMA, where they're economic emergency preparedness and recovery partner. And as I indicated in the chat, we have been focused on preparing people for national emergencies and natural disasters. Unfortunately, national emergencies are a lot more devastating than natural disasters. 9/11, even if it's a natural disaster, sometimes they can become a national emergency. For the East Coast, it was Superstorm Sandy in 2012. In the New Orleans region, it was Hurricane Katrina. And this national pandemic is, outweighing all of those. Even we've heard, comments about more people have died from this than the Vietnam War. So it shows you that from a lot of perspectives, this thing is much more challenging from our historical perspective than one could imagine. With that in mind, there is a national, regional, and local resiliency movement. And as the last speaker indicated, when it is working effectively in the preparedness campaign mode, when the recovery sets in, that's where you see the most success occurring. We've reached up to 25,000 Americans that we have been currently helping in the recovery stage. Small businesses being able to get their PPP loans and grant applications in the door for them, money, as well as helping Americans around credit challenges, people who are dealing with mortgages, people who are dealing with their credit card payments, and for people who are dealing with student loan debt challenges. Believe it or not, even though the debt doesn't have to be paid back for student loan until September 30th, you still have people concerned about the CRA scoring. If you've had student loan debt, how that is affecting people's ability to get the PPP loan, as somebody had indicated in one of the breakouts earlier. So we see that the public-private partnership piece is very critical. Having the relationships on the federal, state, and local level are instrumental when a national pandemic like this is occurring, to be able to work with trusted partners, to be able to not just receive financial resources, but have the trust factor within the partnership to help reach people on the ground who need it the most. And so that's what we're doing with Operation Hope. We have a Hope Inside COVID-19.org. I'll put it on the chat website. And as another speaker has spoke about, when you can tap into your expertise base to help do what they do to help people, that's where the win-win is. And so we have, through our virtual volunteer program outside of the paid employees at Operation Hope that are helping Americans, we have bankers who on their off time are able to volunteer and come into our virtual system and take clients and do case management for 10 minutes, 15 minutes to help people get their solution needed for their case management problem.
Thank you, Jenna. Anyone else on the idea of collaboration? Especially just from your local community. I'd love to know, especially folks that are really like in the weeds of a specific community. I saw Derek lean forward and I saw Leah. So let's keep it short so we can keep it moving. But Leah and Derek would love to hear from you guys both.
Sure. I guess I'll take it to the specific PPP program. So VCC, as an SBA lender, was able to get 151 loans out last time. We're hoping to do at least that this time around. And the reason we think we were able to be successful is because we took both clients and non-clients, but there was such a rally from our regional partners to get accurate information into the hands of these borrowers. So the chamber, all the county and city EDA partners from our MSA, we're meeting 3 times a week right now for an hour each time, and just kind of sharing resources. And like the chamber grabbed and did a PPP workshop about for sole proprietors and 1099s. The Retail Merchants Association grabbed a bank and did another version of that. But again, the whole region recognized the need was on the technical assistance to get these packages accurate and complete, because like other banks, VCC couldn't start packaging or processing until we had complete packages, because we just had to be efficient in it. And so borrowers had to come prepared with their information. And that really was, in the Richmond market specifically, a collaborative effort to get that information out. And we were turning over workshops like within 24 hours, grabbing panelists, throwing it on email blasts, and minimum probably 50 to 100, if not up to 200 people on these webinars and things. So I think that, and those will continue as these resources continue to roll out. That is not stopping. It's just one example of that.
Yeah, I'll quickly add what's happening in Cincinnati, Ohio right now. So my name is Derek Prezone with an organization named Mortar. We provide resources for entrepreneurs of color who want to start or grow a business in a neighborhood experiencing gentrification. We had several of our entrepreneurs reach out to us and express an emergency need. We sent out a survey and we got 22 responses within a week. So we knew that there was a challenge out there, and many of them we said should apply for PPP and other SBA dollars. And we learned pretty quickly that there were a variety of reasons why they were not able to access those resources. So we felt that the next best thing for us to do would be to mobilize a local fund that took advantage of the great corporate and philanthropic community that we have here. I think the banks and some of these other traditional funders thought that the SBA programs would be kind of the panacea that would resolve some of the issues that our Black and brown entrepreneurs were facing. And we had to, in many ways, show them that a local response would be necessary. So for the last month, I've been working with our African American Chamber of Commerce, Urban League, and a variety of other technical assistance providers to create this coalition of organizations that are all experiencing the same thing, which is we have entrepreneurs that we are representing that need access to funding. So we actually launched a fund on Monday. I'll put it in the chat. And it's a combination of 3 things. One, it's a crowdfunding campaign. We're leveraging the power of the crowd to solicit small dollar contributions in the same way that a politician might. So we can try to raise as much small dollars as possible with the hope that our philanthropic and business community will be able to see that there's a movement of energy to have this fund. The next piece is where traditional philanthropy will come in. Let me say it, we're raising $100,000 from that crowd fund. We're hoping that philanthropy can invest another $400,000 so we can have $500,000 of grant dollars that we can deploy in our community. And the larger piece we're trying to do is work with banks and some national partners to bring in a potential loan equity fund that can be invested as part of a restart effort. So the beautiful thing is that we have formed this beautiful consortium of partners and organizations that in my experience have never worked well together, have never played in the sandbox very well together, but we're working together really well now. We're talking every week, we're sharing resources, and I think it's going to be really great. But the challenge is we're fighting a lot of disinformation. With people thinking that the PPP and other dollars will be enough to support our minority small businesses here. So we're having to work against that, but I think we'll get through it. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a fund that can support the needs of entrepreneurs here in Cincinnati.
That's fantastic, Derek. Thank you. And again, one of the things we're going to try to do after this is all done is we're going to connect everybody and try to wrap as many of these great ideas and initiatives up into a digestible way so we can share it. And then likewise, might reconvene this roundtable and like touch base. Aaron, you had raised your hand, and
Sure.
then when we go, the next phase of the conversation, we'll look at innovative ideas that are kind of, Derek actually hit on this because he has innovative ideas, and then how the community as a whole needs to like support them and work together. But we'll go through the next round just looking at innovative ideas. But Aaron, why don't you conclude the collaboration thought? And then Grace, you had an idea you wanted to share after that.
Yeah, and I'm going to take mine in a little bit more of a talent direction. So we're doing a lot of business.
And Aaron, if you can introduce yourself too.
Oh, sorry. Aaron Bertram, Roanoke Regional Partnership, Roanoke, Virginia, and I'm the Director of Talent Solutions. So our business investment team is focused on getting the businesses up to speed, and I'm working on the talent side. Before all this, my focus was really on talent attraction and retention, and looking at creative ways to bring new people to Roanoke. And one of the populations that we focus on is really trying to build better relationships with college students. And so we really felt like this could be a time where we could build better relationships with students who are from our region, who are being educated in our region, or maybe outside of our region looking to come to like a mid-sized city. So what we're doing is we're going to have hopefully a hybrid model program, but we'll launch it virtually, and we'll do professional development, networking, and job shadowing. And we hope to, especially the job shadowing and networking, hopefully will be in person. This is a program we launched last year in person, but have revamped the whole program to be online. We're collaborating with higher ed, all of our localities, and our private partners to really make this a really robust program and show off the region in a really positive way. So even though we're doing professional development virtually, we'll rotate around the region to interesting places that are really beautiful and showcase the region in a really positive light, and hopefully get on the radar of a lot of students who potentially were going to be off to bigger localities. So just see it as an opportunity to still attract talent in a creative way.
Thank you, Aaron. So did anyone have any thoughts they wanted to add to the collaboration idea, or would kind of spending the last 15 minutes of this call looking at some innovative ideas in a more concentrated way? We can revisit some of the ideas that have come up. Is that a good idea? Or so first off, anyone have any thoughts about collaboration they want to bring up? And if not, let's move on to kind of some of these tactical ideas. You can either pitch a new one or talk about a new one or return to a previous speaker's thoughts.
Paul, if I can jump
Go ahead,
in.
Sean.
I'll be super fast. I think this could be for kind of both sides of the discussion. So one thing that we kind of identified early with our outreach calls to the businesses was that very early, some already identified that they were going to pivot, right? Whether it was just making items in response to the actual pandemic, right? Our breweries doing sanitizer and/or some of our clothing manufacturers or bag manufacturers pivoting to make masks. And so what we started doing kind of unbeknownst to us was that kind of logging all that information. And then we found that if you can think about some of the end users, of course, for those services, let's talk about some of our regional hospital chains here were in need of those products, right? Just because of the supply chain disruption. So from a kind of collaboration standpoint, we really kind of put that in the hands of our regional chamber of commerce, in addition to we have a regional economic development authority here, HREDA, to take the lead on that particular efforts. And so they actually kind of rounded up all the cities here within the Hampton Roads region to gather that same information. So we just weren't identifying needs and/or services in our city, but we can spread that across. And so I really took my hat off to what they are continuing to do, because again, all businesses had this type of disruption, but if we had a way to kind of help continue to bring revenue into their pots to help them further support what they're doing and get through this time frame, we saw that as a very quick and necessary need that we can continue to fuel to this day. So just want to add that small caveat there.
I just wanted to share one resource that I know that several people on this call are already on. What we realized is that we only know what we know, and to be able to share information widely, we wanted to be able to collect it. And as part of the Startup Champions Network convening, what we ended up with was the Ecosystems Unite Facebook page. We just wanted to make a very agnostic page that nobody owns really, but be able to share information widely to distribute out. I mean, ecosystem building is usually a nodal thing, but in cases like this, when we want to synthesize information, we've filtered it through that. So any of the ideas or the projects that you're working on that you're open to sharing. I know Grace is talking about the stuff that that they're doing over at Clubhouse, and so all of that is available and open, and you take with you the stuff that works, and what doesn't, just keep scrolling. So.
Hi, this is Janae Roscoe again from Operation Hope. So a couple of Operation Hope's partners have actually been giving out small dollar and mid-dollar grant opportunities. And so we share that with people who are also applying for the PPP and small business and other kind of loans. Salesforce, Facebook, U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, although that one just closed, but the Salesforce and Facebook ones are open. And then LendUp is a company as well. Cabbage is not one of our partners, but we certainly like what they're doing and commend them for their efforts. And then Black Enterprise Magazine has done a really successful job of filling the gap in places, especially in the Black communities where hand sanitizers and masks may not be plentiful. They highlighted 7 Black small businesses that create hand sanitizers. And within the last month, we've been sharing those resources with people, and we've received thank you cards from the 2 of the small businesses, because they did notice a very big influx of people ordering online, and in some cases they sold out and were able to receive funding to start new batches. So, and then there's also on the local end, you have people making local masks. So where there is not a supply for some basic services, there's even an African-American bottled water company that has been doing aggressively well in neighborhoods and getting communities where they're running out of bottled water to be able to get that resource to people. So that's one of the ways the collaboration has been helpful, specifically in Hispanic and minority neighborhoods where we're located. We're able to get local entrepreneurs to help bridge the gap with some resources.
I wanted to go ahead and share a little bit about what we're doing here at the Clubhouse. I know about half of you on the screen right now. So my name is Grace Belangia, and we run a collaborative nonprofit workspace in Augusta, Georgia. It's about 8 years old, and it's an independent space that was birthed for a lot of different reasons. But we run a makerspace and a collaborative workspace and a code boot camp. We have about 230 members. And one of the things I wanted to share with you in this forum was how our non-traditional partners have come up through the ecosystem that we've done based on this crisis. And so we've had cordial relationships with our chamber and our Main Street and our hospitals and universities, but the non-traditional ones came and reached out to us specifically about a month ago because they were in dire need of a mask for their first responders, and we run a makerspace. And there was a lot of movement, if you're familiar with the maker movement, of hobbyists with 3D printing and trying to source all of those materials. And so we have catapulted to basically empowering our members who are either out of work or underemployed now to help us scale an opportunity to make 1,000 masks. And we've gotten some emergency funds. We've gotten some sponsors who have basically said no to us for years and years and years. And all of a sudden they're like, yes, how much do you want? And so it's been the silver lining in terms of some of the funding that we've been able to get. Others have had to pivot and literally have told us we can no longer fund you because we have to move those monies to another pile. So we're navigating that behind the scenes. But I thought it was interesting because we're not in the healthcare space. That's not our forte. But all of a sudden we're talking to the firefighters. We're talking to the healthcare system presidents. We're talking to the Department of Public Health, and they're making introductions for us at the state level, which has access to more resources and more funding. And so part of me wants to tell all of you to tell your communities that think unconventionally in some ways, because there are partnerships out there that you may not even think about that you could exist. We had a firefighter yesterday when we were dropping off one of our prototypings, and we were talking about the branding of our ecosystem, of our mask that we're getting ready to share. And he basically went into this whole tangent about how a firefighter there moonlights as a social media consultant for other fire stations around the country. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently that's a thing. And so I'll put the post on the chat, because you just never know who knows who. It's called Innovation Mesh is the network, and it's just a landing page right now. If you're a maker and you have a 3D printer, you can sign up. If you're a hospital or first responder and you need the things we're providing, we'll provide that for you. We're not making a profit on all of the things, but we are selling them, and we're telling people that we're just turning the money over back into our ecosystem. So we're paying our makers. They get burnout. I'm sure, like all all the volunteers, they want to help up until a point. And then when we talk about, whether they're couriers, just driving around, picking up the products, sourcing materials for us. I think there's a lot of creativity and conventionality that exists in this space right now. And again, we're trying to bring our existing community together, keep them together, because again, we can't literally be in our space right now. So we're virtually creating a community for them, but then also tapping into some new connections. I did have an ask, and I'm hoping that somebody in this group can help us. As we've scaled the mask product, we've also realized that 3D printing is great for our small batch. And so we're getting ready to scale it to possibly make 5,000 to 10,000 masks. We find that we're all understanding that this is kind of a long game. And we're also getting people that are not first responders wanting the masks. So if you think about construction workers, housekeepers, people in the catering space, they want this product to also protect themselves as their clients. We're actually looking for injection mold companies or companies that have injection mold capabilities. So maybe they're a manufacturer that has a machine that's either sitting idle or they'd be willing to work with us. If anybody knows any, please let me know. I assume TomTom's gonna share everybody's emails with everybody. They don't need to be local. We've actually already exhausted our local injection mold companies. I think there's 2 in Augusta. There's 1 in North Carolina we reached out to. We're waiting to hear from them. We don't have the time to go to China to source this. They're looking at like 4 to 6 weeks turnaround. So if you have somebody, doesn't matter where they are in the country, we'd love to connect with them. Like I said, we have some.
Grace, thank you. We were going
to
wrap up the call.
Okay, sorry.
But we typically get a little snapshot of the group. So Ben, you know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm not tech savvy. And I did want to allow both Enoch and Marcus to just have a last word. But let's get the group shot. And if people need to depart it too, that's okay. But let's do the shot first. Go for it, Ben.
Sure. Yeah, if you guys just want to give a wave, I'll take a couple screenshots. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, Paul, yeah, I'll make a quick point, and then Enoch, you're going to wrap it up. One thing that I think has been important in Chattanooga is you really see the value of having people connected, not only through their organizations, but through board seats and task force across the city. Chattanooga, I think, has had a phenomenal response. The city put together a $2.5 million grant and loan program to address businesses that were specifically impacted by the mayor's executive order action. So these are restaurants, barbershops, nail salons, tanning booths, and CoLab was part of a consortium of organizations that helped review the applications for those programs. And so by having relationships with local government, with the university, with corporate partners, as well as philanthropic and other nonprofit partners, it really allows us to move quickly in between conversations, add value where we can, bring in value in other organizations where we may not be able to fit the bill. But I think really having a fluid system allows people to be most impactful. I think the other thing that we all can't underestimate, particularly in this time, and I think Lindsay dropped off, is you got to have engagement and stakeholders at every level. And so even though we're kind of built on this localism model, it's important to have relationships with the state and the federal government, where you can make a call to somebody to get information, because the more quickly you can get information on things like PPP or EIDL, the more quickly you can disseminate that information in your local community. You can advocate at the state level. And so that's the part where I think we've been able to be successful.
Enoch, you've got the last word, and please go for it.
Looks like it's time to go, so I'll just drop a link in the chat, and that pretty much sums it up. But we're helping small business owners figure out how to survive and kind of make it through this time. We've found that there's tons of information out there, and there's tons of resources and money and all that. But the question is, how do you actually go from panic mode and covering your short-term issues to actually stabilizing to make it through however long this time is, and then kind of rebuilding to whatever that future state is? And that's some kind of more long-term community of support. So we helped over 1,000 small businesses all around the country just in the past few weeks. In that process, we developed some scalable models, and a lot of that is free. And then some of that we're just getting the cost sponsored. So if you want free support to small businesses in your community, we can help. And if you want some at-cost support as well, or if you know some resources to sponsor support for businesses, we're trying to just scale up as much support as we can. We're equipped to support tens of thousands of businesses around the country now, and we have this network ready to go, and we're just trying to make us help as much as we can in this critical moment for small businesses. So that's where we're at. More details in the chat. Time's up, so we should go. But good to be here with y'all.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.